This is the story of Zara, who steps into a new home after marriage, a place where she is blessed with the companionship of a charming husband. But lurking behind this serene beginning is a secret, standing silently with open arms, of which she is entirely unaware. On the surface, everything seems peaceful, content, and almost enchanting, yet her heart begins to sink with a strange unease on the very first day. She doesn't yet know what kind of trials her senses will be forced to endure in the moments to come. The colorful flowers adorning the entrance of this new life and the warm words of welcome feel like the beginning of a beautiful dream. But the moment you pull back the veil even slightly, the truth reveals itself to be far more complicated. In most homes, a newlywed bride is welcomed with traditional grace and gentle rituals, but in this house, there's a peculiar secret, just the hint of which is enough to leave Zara shaken. On her first night, after the chaos of the wedding, the endless ceremonies, and the overwhelming chatter of guests, Zara entered her room as a bride stepping across the threshold of a new life. It felt as if she had entered a magical world. Her husband, Naeem, so handsome, polite, and soft-spoken, instantly brought waves of comfort to her heart. It was as if all her dreams had finally found their meaning. But with the very first light of dawn, Zara encountered a truth that made her feel as though the ground beneath her feet had vanished. The revelation was so intense it nearly left her paralyzed, for never in her life had she seen anything like it. That night, exhausted from the day's festivities, she fell into a deep sleep. When she awoke, she heard the soft sound of whispers coming from outside. She thought perhaps the women of the house were chatting as part of their morning routine. But what puzzled her was the hushed nature of those whispers. Curious, she slipped on her slippers and quietly stepped out of the room. In the veranda, her eyes landed on a man sitting calmly on a chair. A wave of warmth surged through her heart. She quickly stepped forward and cheerfully said, "Breakfast is ready. Why are you sitting here so early in the morning?" In her mind, she assumed that Naeem, after finishing his prayers, had come out for some fresh air. But the man looked up in surprise and, with a casual smile, replied, "I'm not Naeem. I'm his father." Zara froze. For a moment, she thought she had misheard. How was that possible? The man sitting in front of her looked exactly like Naeem. His height, posture, even the tone of his voice were identical. If there had been even a slight age difference, it might have made sense. But here, the resemblance was so uncanny that anyone could be fooled. Zara knew Naeem's mother had passed away. But if this man truly was his father, then why did he appear so incredibly young? Had he undergone some special treatment? Or was this some divine miracle? Questions began swirling in her mind, sending chills down her spine. This revelation, on her very first day, was nothing short of a shock. Alarmed, she returned to the room and quickly told Naeem about the man in the veranda who looked exactly like him. She also expressed her confusion about being unable to tell them apart. Naeem, lowering his gaze with a light smile, replied, "Yes, people often get confused. But it's not an illusion. My father, Kaleem, takes great care of his health and appearance. That's why the age difference doesn't really show." He reassured her gently, "There's nothing to worry about. You'll get used to my face and everything will settle in soon." But a strange fear had already gripped Zara's heart. She felt there was something deeply mysterious about this house, something no one dared to speak of. If it had only been a matter of physical resemblance, she might not have been so disturbed, but there was something else, an unseen shadow hovering silently. Something she could feel but not name. Something was eluding her grasp, something she couldn't quite define. As days passed, Zara began to realize that Kaleem, who claimed to be Naeem's father, resembled him not just in appearance, but in conversation too. His tone, mannerisms, even the smallest expressions were eerily similar. Most people around them often fell into confusion, yet the older members of the household seemed entirely unfazed. They went about their routines with calm acceptance, as if this bizarre resemblance was perfectly normal for them. Meanwhile, Zara was quietly beginning to feel trapped, with no escape from this unsettling similarity. Everyone repeated the same line, "You'll get used to it." That phrase started to haunt her. Then came another twist, one even more troubling. Kaleem often appeared to know details of Zara's personal conversations ahead of time. For instance, if she had a private discussion with Naeem at night, Kaleem would sometimes reference it the very next morning, offering advice or passing a comment that felt uncomfortably precise. Once he said to her, "Daughter, it's best not to argue with your husband too much in a new home. It won't benefit you." His words mirrored exactly what Naeem had said to her the night before, word for word. The shock of it sent a chill down her spine. Was it possible the walls of the house echoed her private talks to Kaleem? Or was he lurking nearby without her knowing? One evening, after hearing another strangely accurate remark from him, fear crept into her heart. Was he somehow listening in on her private moments? The idea was terrifying. Summoning her courage, Zara finally confronted Naeem. She said hesitantly, "I'm struggling with something strange. I feel deeply unsettled about your father. God forbid, I don't mean to say he has bad intentions, but there should be at least some visible difference between the two of you, your clothes, your hairstyle, something. It's so confusing that I often call him by your name by mistake. And honestly, it's becoming embarrassing for me." Naeem didn't take it well. His face tightened and his tone turned sharp. "Do you think my father would harm you?" he snapped. "Are you doubting his kindness and dignity?" Zara tried to explain through trembling lips that she was merely expressing concern, not accusing anyone. But Naeem shut her down. He accused her of spreading distrust as a newlywed bride. Tears welled up in Zara's eyes. Her only intent had been to share her growing confusion and discomfort, yet she was met with anger. Days passed in this tense back and forth. The fear in Zara's heart only grew stronger. She couldn't speak openly with Kaleem, and talking to Naeem brought no peace either. The other members of the household remained silent or indifferent. No one seemed to care why the father and son looked and acted like twins. Zara spent her days busying herself with housework. At night, she took comfort in her husband's presence. But then came an evening that shattered even that fragile sense of peace. Naeem was out that evening. Zara sat alone in the kitchen, grinding spices by hand. Her mind swirled with doubts and questions. So many fears entangled with the hope that perhaps she was just overthinking. And yet, in every moment of stillness, her unease returned. What is really going on in this house? Just then, she felt it. Soft footsteps approaching from behind. The dim kitchen light cast long shadows on the wall. Her heart leapt. Was Naeem home early? But when she turned slightly, something in her froze. She heard breathing, familiar, but heavier. Before she could look fully, she felt a hand gently placed on her back. The touch was soft, almost comforting, but there was a trace of unfamiliarity, like someone she half knew. Her heart dropped. The wooden handle she was using to grind spices slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a dull thud. She began to stammer in fear. "Naeem, is that you?" she whispered. There was no answer. Only the quiet rhythm of warm breath brushing against her shoulder. Zara's chest tightened. A horrifying possibility began to rise within her. If this isn't Naeem, then who is it? In a trembling voice, she said, "Abbajan, if it's you, please step back. This isn't appropriate." Summoning the courage to glance behind her, she slowly turned her eyes from head to toe. And that's when she saw there was no one there. No one. It was as if the moment had been a terrifying mirage, or perhaps her nerves simply couldn't accept the truth they had sensed. Within seconds, the front door creaked open and Naeem entered the house. Zara looked at him with terrified eyes and immediately knew this was really Naeem. She burst into tears. Between gasps, she told him everything, what she had just experienced in the kitchen. Without a word, Naeem stormed toward the veranda, expecting to find his father there. A man was sitting, his head bowed. Naeem grabbed him by the collar and shouted, shaking him violently, "Why were you near my wife?" Chaos erupted. Zara peeked through the window. Other members of the house rushed out in panic. Kaleem said nothing, but Naeem's face was consumed with rage. Then came the bombshell. In front of everyone, Naeem shouted, "I can't call you my father anymore. I'm going to tell everyone who you really are. You've disgraced me. You're not my father. You're my brother." The ground beneath Zara's feet seemed to vanish. She stood frozen. Naeem's father is actually his twin brother? How could such a massive truth be hidden from her, from everyone? Screams and cries echoed throughout the house. Kaleem, no, Kashif, pleaded with Naeem to calm down. But Naeem was beyond fury. He shoved Kashif hard, sending him stumbling backward. Then he turned to Zara and with eyes full of pain began to explain. That man is my twin brother, Kashif. We were born on the same day. When we were young, he strayed, got into trouble, got involved in terrible things. But our mother made me promise I'd protect him, guide him back, so I did something drastic. I asked everyone to treat him as our father. Zara gasped. I thought if people saw him as an elder, Naeem continued, they'd respect him. Maybe he'd be ashamed and change. But he took advantage of it. He used his fake identity to deceive women, pretending to be a respected, older man. He hid his age, his name, and preyed on their trust. Naeem's voice trembled with disgust. And now he's crossed the final line. He tried to get close to my wife. I will not tolerate this any longer. Zara stood speechless, everything finally falling into place. All the strange moments, the uncanny resemblance, the inexplicable fear, the whispers, the confusion. It all made sense now. They weren't father and son, they were twins. Naeem turned to Kashif and, with thunder in his voice, ordered, "Leave this house, now!" Kashif, shaking with fury, accused Naeem of ruining his life, of forcing him into an identity that never belonged to him. Family members stood in stunned silence. Some tried to stop Naeem, but it was too late. He grabbed Kashif by the arm and dragged him to the door, shoving him out without another word. That night, silence descended over the house like a heavy fog. Zara sat in her room, overwhelmed, replaying everything that had happened, how she had endured so much fear, confusion, and emotional turmoil. And now this unbearable truth had surfaced, reshaping every relationship in her life. Naeem came to her and said, I couldn't let that darkness stay any longer. I've thrown him out for good. He won't come back, Diosa, not ever. Zara finally felt some peace. At least the walls of this house no longer concealed a lurking danger. But even in that calm, a chilling thought continued to gnaw at her. What kind of dreadful games are played in this world? How could someone disguise himself as a father while actually being a twin brother, just to fulfill selfish desires? Meanwhile, as soon as Kashif left the house, he sped off in a storm of rage, his car tearing through the street toward the darkened highway. Thunder cracked above as the rain came pouring down. Zara stood by the window and caught a fleeting glimpse of Kashif's car disappearing at the corner, lit up briefly by a flash of lightning. Her heart skipped a beat. What if he met with an accident? Inside, Naeem was still seething. He thought I'd keep covering for him forever. Well, I've ripped off his mask now. Let him deal with the consequences. The entire house sank into silence. In the distance, the sound of rain hitting the rooftops echoed like a dirge. The night passed, but no one could have predicted what the next sunrise would bring. The next morning, a familiar voice called Naeem with grim news. There had been a terrible accident on the highway. A car had flipped multiple times and crashed into a tree. The driver was pulled out alive, but he was critically injured. Naeem's heart skipped. A part of him wanted to ignore it, to let silence speak. But his conscience whispered otherwise. He's still my brother, he thought. No matter how awful he's been, he shares my blood. At the hospital, Naeem learned that Kashif had suffered severe trauma. His spine was fractured. Doctors feared he might never walk again. Naeem was torn. This same man had manipulated him, deceived others, brought shame into their lives, and yet he was still his brother. As Naeem reached Kashif's hospital bed, an elderly woman stood nearby and introduced herself as Kashif's aunt. She told Naeem with a weary sigh that she had spent her entire life mourning over Kashif's rebelliousness. And now, as he lay semi-conscious, there was no one left to care for him. Naeem bowed his head, a storm brewing inside him. Would he have to carry the burden of his brother's downfall forever? No one knew which test God had placed upon Naeem's shoulders, but in that moment of hesitation, he made a quiet decision. He would help pay for Kashif's treatment, but he would not bring him back into their home. Later, he told Zara briefly what had happened, that Kashif had been in a terrible accident, that perhaps, in some divine justice, he had begun to face the consequences of his deeds. Zara's heart grew heavy. A new kind of fear stirred within her. She remembered she was going to be a mother soon. In her condition, witnessing so much chaos and trauma had begun to wear on her soul. On one side was Kashif's recklessness, on the other, Naeem's rage. Then the cold indifference of the rest of the family. All of it weighed down on her mind like a mountain. And yet, one thing brought her relief. There were no more threats in the house, no shadows lurking in silence. No silent eyes watching her. She could finally breathe at night, and still, somewhere in her heart, a thread of compassion pulled. The same man who once terrified her, who made her feel unsafe in her own home, was now trapped in a wheelchair, helpless and broken. In the months that followed, Kashif's condition worsened. His disability was confirmed to be permanent. The many friends who once laughed with him vanished as though they'd never existed. Not a single one came to check on him. He remained at his aunt's house, slowly fading. His body continued to decay. Some days, pus oozed from his wounds. On others, his bones ached so violently he would moan in pain all night long. Only his aunt remained by his side, offering what little comfort she could. Often, in moments of torment, Kashif would cry out, "Just kill me! Death is better than this!" His aunt would scold him in return, "Life is a gift from God. You should be ashamed of your sins. Repent. Maybe he'll forgive you." But within Kashif's chest, a silent battle still raged. A war between guilt and denial, between shame and stubbornness, between what he had been and what he had become. He hated Naeem, that much was true, and he had committed many sins, all born from his slavery to his own desires. Trapped between his regrets and cravings, Kashif was now paying a terrible price, one that worsened with each passing day. Meanwhile, joy returned to Zara's life with the birth of her son. The whole household celebrated. Happiness once again graced the walls of their home. Naeem's voice softened with affection, and a new gentleness bloomed in his behavior. He even made a list of baby names and consulted a local imam before formally naming the child. Watching him, Zara felt a quiet contentment. Her husband was now eager to be a responsible father. But every time her thoughts wandered to Kashif, she felt a tug of dread. What if he dies? Would that bring scandal or more problems? The joy she felt now, would it somehow remain incomplete? Still, time is a strange and merciless balm. It gradually covers all wounds. Slowly, Naeem reassured Zara that Kashif was no longer part of their lives. "He's completely out of the picture now," he said. "Focus on raising our son." Zara, with a kind heart, agreed. She poured herself into caring for the baby. Months passed. Zara's days became filled with little moments of peace and laughter. She added small touches to the home, making it more pleasant and bright. When the baby cried at night, Naeem would get up to soothe him. Their bond grew stronger with every gesture of shared parenthood. One day, Naeem returned home quietly and told her, "Kashif's condition is worsening. The doctors say he doesn't have much time left." A dull ache rose in Zara's chest. She thought back to how this same man had once brought so much fear into her life. And now, he was lying helpless, waiting for death. It was around that time that Naeem opened up. He admitted to Zara, "If I hadn't staged that elaborate act, making people believe Kashif was our father, none of these troubles would have happened." Zara responded with calm maturity. "What's done is done," she said. "We can't change the past. But life doesn't end at a mistake, not if one repents and walks a better path." Naeem looked at her with gratitude. He felt a deep relief. What a blessing it was to have her as his partner. Just days later, word of Kashif's death arrived. Neighbors had reported a foul smell. Upon checking, they found him lying lifeless in bed. He had been dying for days. His aunt had also fallen ill and didn't realize he had passed. The bitter truth? No one was willing to lead his funeral prayer. Naeem paid for all the arrangements, gathered a few people, and saw to his burial. As he did, tears welled up inside him. Being twins, he thought, was a strange and divine connection, but our paths were so different that they led only to hatred and fear. Zara did not attend the burial. She didn't have the strength to witness the final scene. She simply prayed from the depth of her heart, "May Allah forgive Kashif's sins and protect us from further trials." When Naeem returned home after the funeral, there was a strange peace on his face, as though a great burden had been lifted. He looked at Zara and said with quiet conviction, "This house is now only ours. No more intruding shadows. The mirrors that once reflected blurred faces have shattered." Zara listened and felt tears of gratitude gather in her eyes. She looked at her son and thought, now, finally, this innocent soul will grow in a safe and loving home. These bitter memories would fade with time. Over the next few months, more changes took place. Naeem began renovating the interior of the house. He had the old, peeling paint stripped from the walls and replaced with fresh, bright colors. Every brushstroke was like sealing the past and opening a new chapter. The furniture had been replaced. Even the full-length mirror, once a source of paranoia for Zara, who constantly wondered why father and son looked identical, had been taken away. Now, when Zara stood at the window early in the morning with her baby in her arms, she no longer saw the shadows of the past. She saw hope, pure and bright, for the future. Naeem, too, had changed. Where once he would get irritated at the slightest worry, he now spoke with calm wisdom. "Pain has made us stronger," he would say. "There's no need to be afraid anymore." And each time, those words sent a wave of peace through Zara's heart. She remembered that first day, how she had been shaken to her core by the strange resemblance between Naeem and Kaleem. Now there was no doubt, no confusion. Everything had become clear. She thanked God for allowing her to survive such a harrowing journey, with her sanity and soul intact. Life, of course, always dances between joy and sorrow. Nearly a year passed, and Zara learned that she was pregnant again. The news spread joy throughout the home. Naeem's face lit up with happiness. He became even more attentive, caring for her every need. Unlike her first pregnancy, filled with tension and fear, this time the air was calm, supportive. The entire household stepped in to help. Her mother-in-law offered words of strength. Her sisters-in-law celebrated the news. Zara prayed quietly that all would go well this time. The presence of her little son gave her strength like never before. During this time, Naeem began restructuring relationships within the extended family. He reached out to relatives, worked to resolve old misunderstandings, and told them simply that his father had passed away. "Now," he would say gently, "it's just me and my wife." If anyone asked for more details, he'd say, "It's a very old story, and it's over now." This approach slowly silenced the gossip and rumors that had long hovered over them. Zara breathed easier. No more uncomfortable questions at family gatherings. No more anxious glances. She spent more time at home, experimenting with new dishes, focusing on her son's early education, and finding peace in everyday routines. There were no more lurking shadows, no hidden truths waiting to pounce. Finally, the day arrived, and Zara gave birth to a beautiful daughter. The moment became a symbol of rebirth, of healing. Messages of congratulations poured in. Sweets were distributed in the home. Naeem sat by Zara's side and whispered, "This is the door to our second life. We've left the pain of our past far behind." In their daughter's innocent eyes, he saw the treasure of their future. Tears rolled down Zara's cheeks, but this time they were tears of joy and serenity. She felt as if she had completed an incredible journey, one filled with terror, doubt, and dark corners. But now it had led her to a glowing destination, where love awaited her like a warm lantern in the night. In a soft voice, she thanked Naeem for never abandoning her in the darkest hours, for revealing the truth about his brother, and for giving her the protection she had yearned for. Naeem responded with a quiet sorrow. "I regret not believing you in the beginning," he said. "I was wrong to silence your fears. If the truth hadn't come out in time, who knows what would have become of our home?" With the arrival of their daughter, the house bloomed with new happiness. The baby's coos and giggles, her tiny clothes and pink blankets brought a gentle charm into every corner. While nursing her daughter, Zara would often reflect, "How much I've changed." Once, her heart was clouded with nothing but uncertainty. Now she was a mother, anchored by faith, armed with the strength of belief. Naeem played with their son, kissed their daughter's cheeks, and talked excitedly about their children's futures. All of it pointed to one truth: the ghosts of the past had finally vanished. Only love remained. At times, Zara still found herself remembering that fateful morning, how she had mistakenly taken Kaleem for Naeem. One simple confusion that unraveled an entire web of secrets. Those memories often came rushing back without warning, like a flood. She would recall the chilling moment in the kitchen when she had felt someone touch her back. Even now, she couldn't say for sure whether that moment had been real or just a hallucination. But what she did know, what had always been certain, was that the fear pulsing through her heart back then had been absolutely real. Years passed. Her daughter and son both began to grow. The house grew more vibrant with each passing day. Naeem became more committed to his work, and blessings began to pour into their lives. He started expanding his small business, and Zara too contributed by stitching clothes and offering small services from home. Financial comfort slowly found its way to them. If problems arose now, they faced them together, sitting down to talk, not argue. The old temper in Naeem's nature had softened. He often told her, "I've learned one of life's most important lessons. Lies are built on fragile foundations. They always collapse, and when they do, they destroy everything in their path. It's better to hold on to the truth, even if it brings loss in the short term." Those words soothed Zara's soul. After all, she herself taught her children verses from the Quran and encouraged them to always speak the truth. The beauty of such honest transformations was that, little by little, every shadow of negativity seemed to vanish from their home. During this time, once or twice, someone from outside the family would innocently ask, "Wasn't your father-in-law unusually young? Where is he now?" Zara and Naeem would simply smile and reply, "He passed away some time ago." If the questioner looked surprised and tried to dig further, Naeem would gently steer the conversation in a different direction. "There was no point in explaining. He wasn't our father. He was my twin brother." Retelling the entire story felt unnecessary and painful, so they chose silence. Gradually, even the world forgot. No one imagined that this family had once been caught in the center of an unbelievable drama. A brother pretending to be a father, masquerading behind his twin's face. Perhaps such things only happen in movies, but sometimes even reality delivers the most implausible stories. Life continued to move forward, following its own rhythm. Zara raised both children with strength and guidance. She always encouraged them to speak the truth in difficult moments, to never choose the wrong path no matter how tempting the outcome. She once thought about using Kashif's story as a warning, but then decided against it. For the children were still young, and such a truth could harm their innocent minds. Still, in subtle ways, she planted the deeper lesson in their hearts. Pursuing small gains through deception often leads to massive disgrace. It's better to walk the harder, honest path, because the road of evil always ends in ruin. Years passed. Her son became a young man. Alongside his education, the time came for him to marry. Zara's heart filled with joy. Her son was ready to begin his own life. A proposal was arranged. The house was abuzz with preparations for the arrival of a new bride. And then, suddenly, Zara's mind wandered backward in time. She remembered her own first day in this house, the morning when she called out to Kaleem, thinking he was Naeem. How she had smiled, offered him breakfast, believing she was speaking to her new husband. Can the mind ever forget that first moment of deception? She wondered. It wasn't so long ago, and yet it felt like centuries had passed. Now, a few silver strands glimmered through her hair. Her husband's mustache, too, had begun to catch a trace of gray. But she knew. This wasn't just the passage of time. It was the accumulation of experience. It was the wisdom born from fire. It was life, quietly reshaping them from within. Zara offered many silent prayers for her son's new life. When the newlywed bride entered their home, the air was filled with the excitement of tradition and rituals. This time, Zara welcomed her with such warmth and affection that everyone in the family felt as if their home stood proudly atop a pyramid of happiness. No doubts, no hidden secrets. The daughter-in-law, too, became a cheerful part of this atmosphere. One evening, while sipping tea, she casually asked, "Ami, I don't see any photos of your father-in-law. Did he pass away early? Zara's hand trembled ever so slightly, but she responded calmly, Yes, it was a long time ago. He didn't live very long. The question ended there. The reply was short. But in that fleeting moment, Zara felt a deep sense of peace. It was as if nothing was left unresolved. She had stepped into a new era, one where her inner strength now knew how to gracefully handle even the most delicate questions. Time, as always, continued to move forward. One day, Naeem told Zara he was going to recite Fatiha at his mother's grave and invited her to join. She draped her shawl and went with him. When they arrived at the cemetery, they saw many old, unmarked graves. Naeem placed his hand gently on his mother's resting place and recited prayers. Curiously, Zara asked, Is Kashif buried here too? Naeem nodded and pointed toward an overgrown corner. That grave, once marked, had long since lost any sign of identity. Perhaps the grass had covered it, or time had simply erased it. In a quiet, subdued voice, Naeem said, Only a few people came to his funeral. I arranged the burial in haste. Now there's nothing left to mark it. A wave of sorrow passed through Zara's heart. A man who once stirred such chaos in their lives now lay forgotten in an unmarked grave. No one remembered his story, and he had done nothing worth being remembered for. The thought sent a chill down her spine. She closed her eyes and begged God for forgiveness, for any harsh words she might have ever uttered about anyone. And then, the two quietly returned home, years strung together like beads on a thread. Their daughter, too, grew up. Her wedding day arrived. Zara's eyes welled with tears as she watched her leave. So this is what it feels like to let a daughter go from her childhood home. She remembered her own wedding day, how innocent she had been when she entered this house. The dreams in her eyes, the fears in her heart, and now her own daughter was leaving to begin a new chapter. As a mother, her heart ached with emotions only a mother could understand. Naeem comforted her. We've chosen a good home, he said. She'll be happy there. After their daughter's departure, peace returned to the house once again. But with it came a subtle emptiness. It felt as though a chapter had come to a graceful end. Zara and Naeem now spent more time together. Their faces began to carry the gentle signs of aging. But in their hearts was only gratitude. There were no complaints between them, because they knew. After surviving the fiercest storm, the small gusts of life could no longer shake them. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky was painted in soft hues of crimson, Zara sat quietly in the veranda, lost in thought. She reflected on the strange turns of life, how a single touch could rattle your soul, how a vague sense of fear could steal your sleep, how sometimes we refuse to accept the truth because it challenges the dreams we've carefully built. But no matter how much you try to suppress it, truth always finds a way to reveal itself. In the middle of her thoughts, Naeem quietly came and sat beside her. Zara turned to look at him, and they both instinctively smiled into each other's eyes. In a gentle voice, Naeem asked, What are you thinking about? Zara gently told him that she had been remembering the old days, the time when she couldn't believe that father and son were not two people, but identical twins. Naeem let out a long breath and said, What a time it was. The lies I crafted, the way Kashif took advantage of them. Thank God we now live a free life. No more lies, no more pressure, no more suspicious footsteps at our door. With that, they both fell silent, gazing at the horizon as the twilight deepened around them. It felt as though, even in the darkness of night, a soft light glowed within them, the kind of light that only truth and mutual trust could ignite. That was their real victory. After all the ups and downs, they had learned something profound, that sometimes in trying to save those closest to us, we walk the wrong path, and in the end, we fail to save them or ourselves. Zara whispered, if only Kashif had changed in the beginning, none of this would have happened. But he was proud of his tricks. That pride drowned him. Naeem nodded with regret. I also resorted to deception to protect him. But as you can see, no story born of lies ends well. Zara agreed and said, But God protected us. He steadied us before we could fall. I'm grateful he gave me a husband who eventually chose the truth. Naeem took her hands into his and, without saying a word, closed his eyes and offered a quiet prayer from the heart. Later that night, they ate dinner as usual, checked in on the children over the phone, and sat on their bed together. Zara dimmed the small lamp beside the bed just enough to keep the darkness from feeling heavy. Naeem looked at her and said, I've been thinking, I want to write down this entire journey someday. Maybe when life gives me time. I want our future generations to know how deception always leads to disaster. Zara chuckled softly. Who's going to read such old stories? Our kids are from a new world. They remember their own troubles more than their elders' tales. Naeem smiled. Still, and if even one person finds a lesson in it, it'll be worth it. Zara encouraged him. Then you should write it. Just promise me one thing. The ending must be hopeful. So no one thinks this was just a tragedy. Naeem replied, Our ending is hopeful. God forgave us. He saved us. What joy could be greater than that? And so, between gentle words and tender silence, they drifted into sleep, unaware of the moment dreams overtook their conversation. The next morning, as the sun filtered softly through the curtains, Zara awoke with a deep breath of contentment. She remembered, years ago she had once woken the same way, only to mistake the man on the veranda for her husband, but now she knew there were only birds singing in her veranda, no shadows, no confusion. Grateful, she rose from the bed. Life had given her enough time to live out the rest of her days in peace, to leave behind the storms and the fears that once clung to every breath. It was a new dawn, a dawn of real peace, a dawn of earned trust, and this time Zara's heart held no unease, no phantom whispers. Her eyes carried only thankfulness, and her soul glowed with light. In this way, every turn of their journey, every twist, every truth revealed, every trial had reached its destined conclusion. Zara and Naeem had faced hardship, endured storms, felt the lash of betrayal, and cowered under fear. But they never let go of each other's hands, and in the end, time bowed before their truth and sincerity. Kashif became a cautionary tale, a man who, wrapped in deception, tried to return to the right path too late. The day of his accident marked the beginning of his downfall. Life gave him a second chance, but he threw it away in more wrongdoing. In the end, he was crushed beneath the weight of his own false identity. This entire journey left Zara with a lasting lesson, that no matter how many confusions one walks through, if a person clings to honesty, faith, and meaningful relationships, they will ultimately succeed. Misunderstandings may cause fear and roadblocks, but love, trust, and truth always shine brighter than any fogged mirror. After all, truth by its very nature burns away illusions. Sometimes we feel as though we are trapped in a nightmare, but when we wake up, we realize the shadows we saw were never real to begin with. For Zara, it all became a memory, a part of the past. In the days that followed, she focused on strengthening her family, teaching her children how to handle life's twists and turns, and working alongside her husband to turn their home into a peaceful haven. It was a kind of ending where every wound had turned into a blooming flower of gratitude. Now, all that remained was hope, light, and a smile of peace, once mistaken for a dream, now made real by truth.